All right, my friends, thank you for joining me once again. Today I'm going to talk to you about restoring lost courage. Have you ever had a time in your life when you were called upon to act or to perform in some way or another? Perhaps you had a duty or an obligation, or you enrolled in something that you thought you would like and you really believed that you might be the right person for this. So you trained, you applied yourself. The day of glory arrives. You're out on the field, and all of a sudden, all the belief you had in yourself washes away. You've stacked the odds against yourself mentally, and you stop believing that you had what it took. And you gave up on yourself. And this really could apply to a lot of things, but you thought distancing yourself would be a fair trade-off. I could live with it. I could live knowing that I just wasn't the right person at the right time. And you walked away from it. You gave up. And you think about it later on. And you realize what a mistake that was. Because you're not feeling so good about it now. And maybe years have gone by. But you don't discuss this with anybody. You want to keep it swept under the rug. Because in some small way, you feel like it kind of defines you. Now maybe you've gotten over the hump, the hurdle. Maybe there's been other opportunities that have arisen, but perhaps there hasn't. Or you've let it cripple you, handicap you in some way as to believing that you're always going to be that person. Oh, there's a man that was very familiar with this feeling. His name was Lenny Skutnik. He was born in 1953. And when he was in high school, he was anchoring a relay team. I mean, he said, I knew we could have won, but he gave up. He got tired. He pooped out. And he just stopped. He didn't feel like he had what it took anymore. He was willing to negotiate that trade-off with himself mentally. His coach was none too happy about it. He hollered at him and says, "You gave up, Skutnik. You gave up." I don't think that made him feel very good. That's hard to live with. It's something that lurks in the shadows probably for the rest of your life. And you think to yourself, if only I could redeem myself, but then again, I probably really don't have what it takes. That moment proved it. That's probably how Lenny felt. He went on to work menial jobs. He was from California. He eventually moved to Washington, D.C. Took a job at the Congressional Budget Office. On January 13th, 1982, everything changed for him. Everything changed for him as he knew it. See, there was a blizzard that was blowing in, so many of the people there in D.C. were heading home early from work to be with their families, and so they wouldn't be trapped in the bad weather. But they ran into a traffic jam, and he couldn't understand why. He certainly wasn't the only one. He gets out of his car to try to find out what's going on. He'd heard murmurs that someone was hurt. You see, what happened was Air Flight Florida 90 had taken off from Washington, D.C.'s National Airport. And it smacked a bridge, and it crashed into the Potomac River. This is tragic. 78 people died in this. But in the meantime, before everything came to a close, there were people that were hanging on the wing, that were sitting in the wing waiting to be rescued, and nobody was acting. And so Lenny saw this, and he went out on the ice. He saw one woman, and her name was Priscilla Tirado. Her husband and her infant had died on the plane that day. Against all odds, Lenny went out there and he did everything he could to save her. You see, a helicopter had already tried to. They lowered the life-saving device, but she just couldn't get to it. And nobody else was acting. Nobody else was acting. But Lenny went out there and he risked it all to save her. The time had come. The time had come. And now he has a new story. He was a hero. People were asking for his side of the story. He became a hero. He became almost legendary in the presses. I think I remember when this happened. I was 12 years old. They carted him off to the hospital because they were concerned that he might have hypothermia. And the only thing he was concerned about was, is this going to cost me anything? And they assured him, no, it's not going to. But before he could even get there, one of the people that were taken out of the water was shivering and freezing. He took off his own clothes that were wet and other things he had with him, and he tried to make that person warm with what he had. You see, the moment had arrived for him, and he wasn't thinking about the past necessarily, but he knew that somebody had to act because nobody else was. And this was his redeeming time. You know what he said? You know what he said when he finally got interviewed about this? He felt good about himself. He said, when I got out of the water, I was satisfied. I did what I set out to do. I was satisfied. I did what I set out to do. Maybe you haven't felt satisfied in a long time because of this memory that you have of your former self. You can satisfy that. You can slake that thirst to redeem yourself and regain your confidence. But you might not find it by looking for it. Pay attention to the interruptions in life. Oftentimes we get upset at things that get in our way, at the interruptions, the things that slow us down, that keep us from what we want to get to. And really, a lot of times those are opportunities for something. You're going to be tested. You're going to be tested. And they very well may come in the form of an interruption. And when you see someone else in danger and no one else is doing anything, everyone else is just watching because they're in fear themselves, you're going to realize that's the time to act. And you're going to look back and realize that maybe you didn't really lack so much confidence back then because you stepped up even then. In your distant memory, you're going to realize, I did step forward. That doesn't have to define who I am because I gave up one time. You will restore your courage. But you have to keep your eyes open and you have to be willing to act when the moment presents itself. I hope that spoke to you. I hope that means something to you and sets your mind at ease. Life has a way of coming around. All right, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. If you want to hit the thanks button, I'd greatly appreciate it. If you want to donate to this channel, I'll put a link down below. And share it with somebody else. All right. I thank you for your time. I'll catch you in the next one. In the meantime, be wise.